We got it. We're good. Beautiful. First try. So glad you guys are here with us, enjoying this beautiful New England spring weather. You know, it's either just a little rainy or a little humid or a little too sunny or a little perfect. I don't know. But as Brother Justin said, we are in Brother Justin. Do you like that? I grew up in a faith tradition that you called everybody brother instead of, you know, the Catholic tradition calls people father. I grew up in a church where they said brother instead, and so everybody was brother something. So it's just like my default. We don't do that here, but maybe I do. Yeah, it's fine. It's whatever. So we are in the book of Luke. We're going through this as a church together, investigating one of the four Gospels of Jesus Christ. So in the New Testament, there are four Gospels. These are the four biographies of Jesus, the four stories of his life as told from four different people, three of which were eyewitnesses, one of which who was a historian. That's Luke. That's who we're going through today. In fact, Luke is probably ancient history's greatest, most well-studied, most well-known ancient historian. And so he records the life of Jesus in a really powerful way in that he is detailed and he is thorough, and he is documenting it for a purpose. He's not just writing down random facts. He's telling us the facts so that they are aligned with God's will and God's way. And so we're studying today a very, very interesting passage of Scripture. In fact, I would say that this verse, this passage, is the most well-known Bible verse to non-Christians. To a non-Christian, everybody knows this verse. Now, they've probably seen John 3:16, like maybe at a concert or, you know, wrestling or whatever. They would throw up the signs, John 3:16. And you just kind of seen that, Tim Tebow on his eye black. I think people know that one. But if they were pressed to name one other Bible verse, this is the one they would pick. And so this morning's sermon, we're going to take a look at the rest of the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus taught on. We're going to talk about three major things. But the title of this sermon is Don't Judge Me, Bro. Don't judge me, bro. It's funny, my brother and I had this like kind of banter. We go back and forth. We would joke about this passage, and we would say, don't judge me. You don't know how much milk I put in my cereal. Like, leave me alone, all right? It's my life. I'll put the cereal in there that I want to. Don't judge me. Misusing that passage. But we're going to do three things. We're going to go through three steps today through this passage. I hope you have your Bible. If not, you can grab one in the back. It's not stealing. They're free. You can have that. Take it with you when you leave. So buckle up, Buttercup. We're going to hit the ground running. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and there's a lot of truth here that we would want to sink into our hearts and change our lives. Whenever we experience God, experience His Word, we want to come away from the Word changed. Like, what is God's truth? And how is it going to change my life? So, Jesus, what he's doing in the Sermon on the Mount is that he is giving us three major distinctives of what it looks like to be a Christian. Like, if you want to follow me, Jesus says, this is what your life should look like. This is the kind of person you should be. I love the fact that Jesus is simple about that. He goes, hey, what does it take to be not a good person, that's so arbitrary and vague. No. What does it take to be a disciple of Jesus? And he gives us these three things. And also, if you're like a Bible nerd like me and you want extra homework, the book of James, written by the half-brother of Jesus, is actually a more in-depth treatise on the Sermon on the Mount, where James actually sits down and kind of fleshes it out even more in a very, very practical way, which is very easy to understand. In fact, our student ministry is going through the book of James at the same time as we're going through the book of Luke, so I think it was kind of a great matchup that we kind of did that at the same time. So, here are the three things. The first one is this, is that I need to care for other people from a place of humility, that I need to have a sense of caring and a sense of buy-in into the lives of others, but I need to do so from a place of humility. Number two is that right living, if I want to live the right way, if I want to live the way that honors the Lord, if I want to live the way that is a blessing to others, that comes from a heart that has been made right. Like, it comes from who I am. It comes from my core, and it flows out into my actions. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then number three, the last part of what Jesus talks about here is a life of obedience is the only life. A life of obedience to Christ is the only life that's going to make it. Like, what is your life built on? And we're going to talk about these three massive major topics here. But let's go to the first one and talk about one of the most misunderstood, misinterpreted verses in the entire Bible. Luke chapter 6, verse 37. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. And so we, in our society, I would say the biggest sin for a non-Christian, the biggest crime you could commit would be the crime of telling somebody that their truth is incorrect. And I think Oprah, for as much good as she did for those who had to stay home from school sick for daytime television, as much good as she did there, she kind of skewed us with this thinking, that this idea of your truth, of subjective truth, that whatever your reality is good, is perfect, and no one can challenge that. That's subjective truth. Hey, I'll do me, you do you. Stay in your lane, leave me alone. What I see is right, what you see is right. This is subjective truth. This is this idea that you can't judge me for who I am. This is who I am, it's my truth. And we take passages like this, and non-Christians will take a passage like this and say, hey, listen, even Jesus said, you're not supposed to judge me. Like, I'm allowed to do whatever I want. And then you look at this verse, and you see what Jesus actually said in the full passage, and you go, no, there's no way that Jesus would tell his followers, hey, don't ever use discernment. Hey, don't ever correct someone. Hey, don't ever try to help out with somebody else's life. What Jesus is condemning here is a type of judgment called condemnatory judgment. It's this place where I'm telling you you're wrong from a place of moral superiority. And that is what Jesus is condemning. When he says, don't judge, he's saying, don't make value statements. Don't make a value statement. In fact, the word judgment in the New Testament is this really fun, really cool word it's called krino. Write that down, it'll be on your test afterwards. Krino is the Greek word for judgment. And what it means is to separate and rank by distinction. And what Jesus is saying here is, don't do that with people. Like, don't pull people apart and say, okay, you stay over here, you're good, you're bad. Don't do that. He's saying, when you are making a judgment call in somebody else's life, don't do it from a place of moral superiority. Like, don't just do this, this idea of I'm better than you. And I think what we do sometimes is that we assign to malice in other people what they probably didn't even mean for ignorance. I think we assume the worst of others. Like, when somebody hurts us, when somebody wrongs us, we assume they had nefarious intent. You probably did that on purpose. You're an evil person. How could you have done that? You have betrayed me. And yet, when we make mistakes, one of the first things that we like to say is, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to do that. We want grace for us. In fact, in the church world, we would say, we like to have grace for me, but not for thee. Like, no. You are the one who did something nefarious and wrong and evil. I'm the one who was just like that meme. I'm just a girl. I just messed up a little bit. Leave me alone. I love that meme. We assume the worst of others while giving us nothing but grace and second chances. And Jesus says, no. That's wrong. Don't do that. By the measure that you use to judge other people will be the same one that I use for you. Jesus is not calling his followers to abandon discernment or caring for one another. In fact, what you find throughout the entire New Testament is that Jesus calls his disciples to be actively engaged in caring for and correcting one another. Like, we are supposed to call one another out from a place of love, not a place of moral superiority. But if I see you doing something detrimental, if I see you doing something dangerous or harmful, as a brother in Christ, my responsibility to the Lord and to you is to say something, is to correct that. I would be a terrible father if I just sent my son out to play in the street and didn't watch him. Well, I don't want to judge him. Like, let him do whatever he wants to do. Like, I'm not going to stop him. That would be infringing on his freedom. He should just be able to do whatever he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. Who am I to say that that's wrong or dangerous? Hopefully you would call CPS on that, right? Like, just sending my kid out to the wolves. It's not the 80s, okay? We don't do that anymore, right? Do you know where your kids are? You guys remember those commercials? Like, it's 8 o'clock. Where are your children? If you don't understand that reference, I'm sorry. But Well, maybe not, actually. You know where your kids are. You're a good parent. So, no, like, we're not just supposed to, like, turn this blind eye to the hurting and the suffering of our Christian brothers and sisters. In fact, in the book of Galatians, I think I've got this verse in there, Joshua, Galatians chapter 1, this is what Paul writes about what this looks like in a very real way. He says, brothers, if any of you is caught in a transgression, that's a very heavy way of saying a sin or a crime. If you've ever done something really bad, if you've ever betrayed somebody, if you've ever dropped the ball, if you've ever harmed somebody, a transgression. If anyone is caught in a transgression, you who are spiritual should restore that person in a spirit of gentleness. That's the key. And keep watch over yourself, lest you too be tempted, unless you fall into the same thing. You need to approach this person from humility and gentleness. So Christians are called to check in on one another. We are called to care. We are called to judge one another. But it's a judgment from the correct standpoint, from the right place, a place of humility, a place of gentleness, and not a place of ego, not a place of I'm better than you, not a place of assigning this huge evil, intention to that person. No. And this is what Jesus says. I love this so much. It says, give and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and that will be put into your lap. And you hear that and you're like, what are we talking about? What was that a lyric or something at the time? What are we doing here, Jesus? What that line is he's talking about, in their culture back then, 2,000 years ago, it was a mostly agricultural society. So when he said that to the people as farmers, they knew what that meant. Most of us in here are not farmers. If you are, that's cool. Let me hang out on your farm. But this is a farming term for when you were gathering a bushel of wheat. And that a bushel it's not just like a random amount. A bushel is it's like about a cube size, 2 feet by 2 feet amount of grain. And what you would do is that you would use a bag that you would sling around your shoulders, and you would drop the grain in there. And what he's saying is, don't use an ungodly measuring system. Don't use a selfish measuring system, because what you're doing when you go to make your trades is that you're saying, I'm giving you a bushel, it's this amount right here, but I'm not going to pack it in. I'm just going to lightly fill the grain, and the grain's going to float up to the top, and it's going to fill up. It'll look full, but it'll be empty. But yet, when you do business with people, you want them to shove it down and pack it in and make sure that cube is airtight, there's no space for gaps, and that it is absolutely to the brim. He goes, when you deal with people, you need to use a good measure, press it down, shake it, run it over, place it into your lap, and so that they can see it's so heavy and such a full burden, like a burden of a bushel, that they can see, okay, he's dealing fairly with me. In fact, he's going above and beyond. And that, he goes, that's the standard by which we should use with our relationships with other people. Then Jesus, I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Chosen, but The Chosen does a very good job of kind of showing the humor of Jesus, because there's a lot of humor in the New Testament, especially out of Jesus' mouth. And so what he does here is he uses kind of a comical analogy to get them to better understand this in verse 39. He says, we'll skip to verse 41. Why do you see the speck? This is the comical part. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the log that is in your own eye? He goes, I think everybody, the universal human experience is if you felt something get in your eye, right? If you wear contacts, you've had that contact kind of flip over. I'm supposed to wear contacts, and I tried putting them in. And at the office, I put them in, and I was like, cool, I did it. And then the next day, I went home, and I put my contact in, and I couldn't get it out. And I was like, all right, cool, 911. I was like, I only have one good eye, and now there's a piece of plastic lodged into it. This is it for me. I now need the walking stick. I'm done. That was that moment of panic. There's something, and maybe you're not a contact person, but have you ever had that thing in your eye, that little piece of wood, and that little you can feel it like a grain of sand in your eye from the beach, and your eye is watering, you can't see anything, and you just hate that so much. That is one of the worst feelings. All right? It's like a splinter under the fingernail, piece of wood in your eyeball. That's a terrible, terrible feeling. And Jesus says, you know what that feels like, and you see somebody with that speck in their eye, and you think, I need to do something. And here, the speck, what Jesus is talking about, is you see the sin in another person's life. You see the brokenness. You see the crime that somebody else has done wrong. You see the hypocrisy. You've seen how they've hurt somebody. You've seen something that they've done wrong. And you think, I need to fix that. I need to correct that person. I am the moral police. And Jesus is saying, no. You need to recognize first that you can see the speck in somebody else's eye, but you yourself have a log in yours. And when he says log, what he's talking about is a support beam, the load-bearing beam that would have gone across the roof of a thatched house. So you're talking like a 6x6 log, a tree of a piece of wood that would have been what held up your roof. He's saying you're walking around with that shoved into your eyeball. That your sin is huge. Your sin is the problem, and you are going to ignore your crimes to call out the crimes in others. And we've been on that side, right? You ever had somebody call you out for something? It doesn't feel good. Have you ever been called out by somebody who's doing the same thing as you? Let's fight, right? Fight me in the parking lot. Thank you for that. Like, how dare you? It does something to our hearts, right? It causes us to rage. It's like this righteous indignation. Like, how dare you say that to me? Like, you are worse than me. You are a hypocrite. And Jesus is saying, we know what that feels like. Don't be that guy. You need to recognize, I need to recognize, we all as followers of Christ need to recognize that my sins are a beam that are just lodged in my eye. I can't even see correctly. I need to recognize my own faults. I need to be aware. I need to be so self-aware of my own problems and shortcomings. And then when I recognize those shortcomings and those crimes, I need to remove them. I need to cast them out. I need to put them at the feet of Jesus. I need to repent. I need to walk away from those things. I need to own them. I can't ignore my sins while thinking I need to be calling out other people's sins. Like, oh, you're doing that wrong. Oh, you're doing that wrong. You're wrong. You're bad. You're a sinner. You did evil intention there. Say, no. First things first is I need to take care of my own sin. And he says, how could you say to your brother, let me take the speck out that is in your eye, and when you yourself do not see that the log is in your own? You are a hypocrite. First, remove the log out of your own eye, and you will see clearly enough to take the speck out of your brother's eye. And that last line is what really kind of changes Christian judgment. Okay? First things first, Christians are not called to judge non-Christians. Let's just put that out there. If I have decided to follow Jesus, personally, if I have given my, I have, by the way. Just make sure you guys are, I don't want somebody being like, wait a minute. Bad pastor. If I'm somebody who has decided to follow Jesus, then I have willingly placed myself under his law, under his rule. It's not my job to walk out of this church and say, everybody who's not following Jesus, the way that Jesus has called you to follow him, bad, sinner, going to hell. Jesus doesn't love you. Like, you need to change that. Like, that's behavior modification. Jesus did not die on the cross for behavior modification. What does Jesus want everybody outside of this church, in this town, in this 5 surrounding towns, to know his love, his grace, his mercy, and to place themselves under his love? 100%. But it's not my job to go around condemning people for not doing that. It's my job to go around revealing the love and the grace and the mercy of someone who could love that person more than they'll ever experience love in their life. I'm supposed to be a reflection of the grace of Jesus, not a reflection of the law of God. I'm not the police. So I'm not called to look at a non-Christian and be like, wow, what a sinner. Wow, you need to get your life right. Wow, that's wrong. You're evil. No. My job as a Christian is not to stand in judgment of non-Christians. My job as a Christian is out of a place of brotherly love, from humility, to care for you, and you're supposed to care for me. Like, imagine if I'm caught in a sin and you come to me and you're like, hey man, I think you got some issues, like let's talk about this, and I'm like, hey, don't judge me. Jesus said not to judge me, leave me alone, I can do whatever I want to do. Like, that's not biblical. And that's not biblical Christianity. That's not the brotherhood that Jesus has established for us, that we are supposed to lovingly correct one another. And I think sometimes this is where the world has kind of seeped into the church, and we don't like this, because we don't like being corrected. Nobody likes being corrected. We hate that feeling of having somebody tell you, hey, you could do better. Like, that's not good. Like, we hate that feeling. And Jesus is calling us to do that, to call one another out from a place of humility and love, gently, to lovingly pull that person back. In fact, in James chapter 5, James writes that you have restored your brother unto salvation when you are brave enough to say something. And I think as a church and as a people who love and follow Jesus, we have to be people who love the other person more than we love the relationship with that person. right? You ever had a friendship where you're like, I want to say the truth to that person, but if I tried to help that friend, I would lose the friendship? And God says, no, you need to love that person more than you love the idea of being in a good relationship with that person. Like sometimes you will have to say something harsh to somebody, but it needs to be from a place where you are blameless. Like where you are saying, no. Listen, I am guilty of the same things that you are. Let me help you through my own struggles. Let me show you how I've walked through that. Let me show you how I've navigated that. We are called as Christians to care for one another. And this idea of you can't judge me is unbiblical. What Jesus is saying is stop trying to be the moral police. Stop trying to be the religious, SWAT team that's taking down your friend whenever they commit a sin that you think is wrong. Our culture has confused truth with personal perspective. We live in a time where truth has become subjective. You can do you, I'll do me. And like I said, the biggest sin you could do is to deny someone your truth. That's not what we're talking about here. That's perspective. What Jesus is saying, no. See your sin first and remove it. And then be about the business of caring for those around you. So that's our first point, is the Christian is supposed to live a life of humbly loving and correcting one another. The second part is this, is heart change. Verse 43, for no good tree bears bad fruit, nor again does a bad tree bear good fruit, for each tree is known by its fruit. For figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are grapes picked from a bramble bush. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure he produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. Now, I don't know if you guys are gardeners, or I don't know if you guys are like landscape, like you're into that kind of stuff. Lindsay and I are kind of in our like millennial gardening phase. Like every time we go to Lowe's, I'm just getting more and more plants randomly. Our backyard is like we're trying to just build like a little like garden, I guess. And part of me is like, Lindsay's like wants the flowers, she wants the beautiful things. And me, I don't know why, I don't know what this is about me, but I'm like, I want to grow some vegetables. Like I don't even eat vegetables. They're gross, but I want to grow them. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that is about me. My dad's never eaten a vegetable. I've never seen my father eat a vegetable in his entire life, and that's not an exaggeration. Never. That was the first time as a child I experienced hypocrisy. Why do I have to eat the green beans if the big guy doesn't? My dad said, "Mind your business." So he looked at me and said, "Don't judge me. You don't know me." All right. So we started growing stuff. So I've got like a little small pumpkin patch that's doing well. And for some reason, I'm like, why do I care about this little pumpkin patch I've got going on? I'm growing some hot peppers and some bell peppers. I got some like jalapenos growing in the backyard, and they're like starting to pop up. And I've been like looking at like TikTok videos of how to trim the things from my tomatoes. Like I'm like, yo, I'm in this to win this. Like I could buy these at the grocery store for 34 cents. I don't care. Leave me alone. Don't judge me. But I kind of went back and forth with Lindsay about a plant that I wanted to buy. She's like, that's not going to grow. That's a waste of time. Don't buy that. And I was like, no, I kind of want to do this. And that was an orange tree. I was like, I want an orange tree. There's a great Chinese proverb that says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is today. I was like, today's the day. I'm planting this thing. So I got this orange tree in the backyard. Like I'm putting it in the sun for 6 hours a day. I'm like stopping from my work, going up there, watering it, making sure it's good. I'm not going to see an orange out of this thing ever probably, but I'm obsessed. All right, it's weird. I'm gone for the next few days. I'm kind of nervous. So I'm like left Lindsay a checklist of how to take care of my vegetables and my tree. I'm going to come back and it's all going to be on fire. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Lindsay's like, that's true. Now, imagine if my orange tree succeeds. Imagine it works. And I got this thing in the backyard, and we're having like an Avenue Church cookout at my house. And you guys come over, and you're like, look at Bert's orange tree, and it's just growing oranges. And I said, you know what's great? I love my orange tree, but you know what I wish it was growing instead? Apples. And we're all standing around, we're cooking hot dogs and hamburgers, and you see crazy Pastor Bert go up to his orange tree, and I start plucking the oranges off, and I've got a basket of apples, and I start scotch taping and duct taping and stapling apples to my tree. And I'm like, it's an apple tree now. That's when you're like, okay, get the kids. We're done. All right, it's time to leave. But that's what Jesus is talking about here, is that we are living, he goes, you're trying to live a life producing godly things, but your core isn't that. I'm asking for my tree to produce apples when I put an orange tree in the ground. Jesus is talking about salvation right here. In fact, this verse is convicting. This verse is heavy because this verse tells us you can kind of know who's a Christian and who's not a Christian. Right? If you're a follower of Jesus, your life will look like it. And he uses an agricultural term that if your roots are that of a Christ follower, then the fruit of your life, the actions, the words you say, the choices you make, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, what your life produces will be that of Christ. And you can look at somebody's life and look at the fruit that they're producing and say, that's somebody who doesn't follow Jesus. That's convicting for me, because for me, I'm like, no, I want to be a big old Jesus tree. You know what I'm saying? I want to just be throwing Jesus fruit everywhere. And he's saying a tree is known by the kind of fruit it makes. So if I want an apple tree and I've planted my orange tree in the backyard, the only way that I get an apple tree is by digging up the orange and rooting it out and pulling it up and then putting in the new. And that's what Jesus says that he does for each of us. What this is talking about is we say this all the time, is performative religion. It's this idea that if I can just staple enough oranges or staple enough apples onto my tree, it'll look like an apple tree. And he's saying, no, you're trying to be a good enough person. And if I can just do enough good things, my life will be a Christian. Like, I'll become a Christian if I can just be good enough. If I can just do enough nice things for other people. If I can just say enough good things and just try to hope for the best and just be a positive person. And he's saying, all you're doing when you do these things, if the roots haven't been changed, that's not an apple tree. The roots of the old have to be taken up. They have to be removed. And there's a verse in Ephesians chapter 4 that talks about that when you and I become a follower of Jesus, the roots must change. It says, put off your old self. Put off the old, which belongs to your former way of living. It is corrupt through its deceitful desires, and you need to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God, in true righteousness and holiness. So in Christ, I'm not just a better version of me. I'm not like a nicer version of me. I'm not just a more generous version of me. No. The old Bert is gone. Jesus has established the new. And when the new Bert is there, from the new roots, goodness can come forth because Jesus put his heart and his spirit there. When Jesus died on that cross, he wasn't dying to establish a set of commandments that would make you good. He was dying on that cross to take your place so that the wickedness of the human heart could be extracted and the righteousness of God could be put there instead. That he would trade out your imperfections, my imperfections, for his holiness. Verse 45, the good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good. The evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. This line right here is so convicting for me, and I underline it, I highlight it, every version of a Bible that I have. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You've never said something on accident. It's funny, with a 6-year-old in the house, he'll say something or do something, and the counter, as soon as he looks up and sees that he's done something wrong, I didn't mean to. That was an accident. Did not mean to do that. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody where they say, oh, I didn't mean to say that to you? Oh, you just tripped and said something very derogatory to me? Like, how did that happen? You're like, oh, I didn't mean to make fun of you. I didn't mean to harass you. I didn't mean to say that negative thing about you. No. You said something, which means that it came from someplace. It comes from the abundance of the heart. And so Jesus says, my followers, the abundance of their heart needs to be the goodness of God. And that you can tell who's a follower of Jesus by what they talk about, by what comes out of their mouth, how they encourage love, build up one another. Out of what the change has been done, are they growing oranges or are they growing apples? Lord, please help my orange tree. I'm just saying. All right, so here's the third one. Here's the third and the last part of this passage. And so this is how Jesus closes up his Sermon on the Mount and what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. This is the third one, that obedience as our foundation. Okay, obedience as our foundation. Jesus comforts his followers. He gives them comfort. I love this so much, that Jesus is a God of comfort. He comforts his followers by telling him that the only way that you and I will endure life is hard. Life is painful. And I'll stay here, Joshua, but there's a pause here because I believed this as a kid when I became a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 11, and I had this false belief that when I became a Christian, life would become easy and perfect, and that nothing bad would ever happen. Like, if Jesus loved me, if God loved me, then my life must be good and perfect. Why wouldn't everybody become a Christian, become a Christ follower? Because if I just give my life to Jesus, life just gets easy. And Jesus was like looking at me like, oh, you poor, dumb little 11-year-old. Like, you're in for it. No. Life is broken. The Old Testament, Genesis chapter 1 through 4, clearly lays out that the way that the life is right now is not God's intention. God intended to live in a perfect world with you and I, in a perfect harmony, in a perfect relationship, walking with his creation. That's the goal of Revelation chapter 22, by the way. That's where we're going at the end times. But when God started it off, he wanted a perfect relationship with you and I. But he gave each of us free will. And Adam and Eve in that garden used their free will to walk away. And that's what started the brokenness. That's what we call the fall of man. Because we decided to do things our way instead of God's way. And because of that, life has suffering. Life has pain. Life has messy, messy elements to it. And Jesus says, I'm not dying on this cross to pluck you up out of that mess, to make sure nothing bad ever happens to you. Give you this little hedge of protection that keeps you from ever experiencing anything bad. That's not the case at all. And if that's the kind of Christian you are, I don't hate to burst the bubble, because life hurts. Life is tough. And what Jesus says is he acknowledges this. He says it will be tough. You will suffer. But there is a way in Christ to go through that and endure, to not be overwhelmed by the suffering of life, to not be overwhelmed by the pain, to not be taken down by the evil that is around us. He says, I've provided you a way, and this is how you do it. Verse 46, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what that person is like. A person who comes to me and does my words is like a man who is building a house, who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when the flood arose and the streams broke against that house, it could not shake it, because the house had been well built, had been built on the foundation. Verse 49. But the one who hears and does not do my commands, does not do what I say, is like a man who builds a house on the ground with no foundation, a house on the sand. And the stream breaks against it, and immediately it collapses, and the ruin of the house was great. He's saying, if you are somebody who is going to follow my way, then your life must look like it, and your life must be based on the foundation of obeying Jesus. Now, did Jesus establish a million new rules? When Jesus said, obey my commands, I love the fact that Jesus goes, guess what? There's only one. Love God, love people. And you're like, that's two. He goes, that's one. Love God, love people. And if you build your life on loving the Lord with everything you got, and loving the people around you the way that Jesus loves them, that is what gives you a foundation that he doesn't say, if the floods happen and if the rains occur. These things are metaphors for the calamities of life, the storms of suffering that we all go through. Maybe if we were talking earlier about the fact that I used to live in Texas and had to endure tornadoes on a regular basis. Standing in the parking lot of my church, I watched a tornado form above me. Like, seeing that storm and being like, as a Christian, like, a bad thing should not be happening to me. You're like, no, go inside. What are we doing? No. The one who, like, storms are happening. Some of us in here right now are in a storm. You're in it right now. Like, we're not going to come to church and pretend like life's not happening to us outside these walls. We're not going to just put on some, we get dressed up and go to church and act like life is great. That's not what church is about. Church is not a place where you go and pretend to have it all together. It's a place where you are broken and hurting. It is the hospital for the weary. It is the hospital for the sick, where we come together as God's people to love and care for one another, not to hide that we're going through the storms, but to acknowledge, hey, I'm in the midst of it right now. Can I share my suffering with you? And I love this phrase. It's not in the Bible, but it's one of my favorite phrases on suffering. And it's that suffering shared is divided. It gets spread out and it gets lessened. And I think we get caught up in this thing that I'm going through something bad in life, I have to keep that to myself. And I'm just going to live in my own head, I'm going to live in my own bubble, and I'm just going to suffer, and I don't need to burden anybody else with this. It's like, no. Christ is saying, share that burden with others. You going through something messy? Are you going through anxiety? Are you worried? Are you scared? Are you terrified? Are you in the midst of one of these storms right now? Then have your foundation be built on Christ and then be around God's people. That way they can love and encourage and support you through that. That life is coming at us hard. It's hitting us hard, but you're not supposed to go through it alone. Loneliness is the biggest tool of the devil. He wants you to feel lonely. He wants you isolated. He wants you to be by yourself. He wants you to think you're the only person going through this bad thing. And everybody else is great. Don't burden anybody else. Don't bother anybody else. Absolutely not. Christ, meanwhile, is saying, no, come and bring your burdens to me. Place them at my feet so that I can scoop you up. A perfect father wants to know the suffering and the hurt of his children. And the perfect father that we have in heaven knows that we are going through the storm, but he is preparing us to stand it. To withstand it, that you and I can go through the hurt and the suffering of this world, but what it takes is that I must know the word of the Lord and build my life on it. I need to love God. I need to love people. And when I do this, I'm not just somebody who says, he says at the very beginning, why are you somebody who would say, Lord, Lord, or God, God, or I went to church, and I prayed a few times, and I did these things, why is my life falling apart? I did these things, why doesn't God love me? Like, why I went to the church building. He's saying, no, it's not about just saying it, it's about doing it. You can't just be somebody who goes to church on Sunday and then walks out of here and doesn't live out your faith. Like the apple tree needs to grow apples. The Jesus fruit needs to be shown in your life. If somebody could look at your life without ever hearing you say a word, could they look at your actions, the way you spend your money and your time and the things you say, and they could just look at that and go, that's Jesus. That person has been rescued by Jesus. Look at the way they act. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's love like I've never experienced before. That's grace like I've never seen somebody show grace before. He said, this is what it looks like to withstand the storm, is to be somebody who has built their life on the love of God. So what's your life built on? I've got 3 questions for us as we close out the Sermon on the Mount. Next week, we're going to move into chapter 7 of Luke. But I have 3 questions for us in closing. For us as we walk from here, as we leave for this morning, to kind of rest in and wrestle with this week. The first one is this. Am I more focused on correcting other people's faults than my own? Do I get caught up in this idea that I'm kind of the moral police, that I need to fix other people? That's kind of my job. If I'm a Christian, I'm like the Christian police. Am I more focused on correcting other people than myself? Because I am supposed to correct. I'm supposed to help. I'm supposed to serve other people. I am supposed to say something, but it needs to be from a place that has corrected it myself. In my own, I got to remove the log before I can look at your speck. Number 2. Am I seeking to change my outward behavior? Am I getting caught back up into those religious rules and expectations, that performative religion? Am I doing that more than letting God just transform my heart? Like, let God put that new tree in. Let that Christ tree be placed by him. And it's not about me cleaning up my act and being good. Like I said, I have family who've told me multiple times, Bert, I'll go to church once I start becoming a good enough person. And I'm like, dude, take all of your junk to church. Take your mess to church. Jesus wants it. That's like the silliest thing I've ever heard. That's the idea of saying, before I can hop in the shower, I need to rinse off. I don't want to get my shower dirty. He said, it's not about changing my actions. It's about going to the cross and letting Jesus change my heart. So I've made that decision. Have I ever kind of fallen back into that? Is there any places in my life right now where I'm kind of falling back into that performative religion? And if so, I need to walk away from that and trust the Lord. Number 3, last question is my life rooted in God's word? Or am I leaning on my way? Like that's from what's the foundation of my life? Is the foundation of my life my own wisdom, my own willpower, my own strength? Or is the foundation of my life the deep love that I have for God and the deep love that I have for the people around me? That's the foundational strength that Jesus would have for his followers, to be free and to live a life that honors him.